Good evening, afternoon or morning. Movie Cat is at the microphone, and today I will tell you about the action-packed detective thriller, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Can I call you Elizabeth? I want you to help me catch a killer of women.
Mikael Blomkvist is a journalist and co-owner of the Millennium magazine. He was investigating the affairs of a major Swedish businessman, Wennerström, whose sources of income are mostly illegal, including trafficking in drugs, weapons and people. However, Wennerström found out about this investigation and planted misinformation about himself to the journalist, and then sued Mikael for libel. The court imposed a heavy fine and 3 months in prison on the journalist. Anyway, when exactly to spend these 3 months in prison, Mikael can decide on his own. The Millennium magazine is on the verge of extinction, but its owner and Mikael's sex partner, Erika Berger, does not lose optimism and promises Blomkvist together they can fix everything. Lisbeth Salander is a very unusual girl. She is bisexual and loves tattoos and gothic clothing. Lisbeth is a top-notch hacker and works for one of Sweden's biggest detective agencies. She is assigned to check Mikael Blomkvist because a large industrialist and owner of an entire concern, Henrik Wanner, wants to entrust the journalist with some work. Lisbeth's conclusion: Mikael is clean and honest. Henrik Wanner's lawyer invites Mikael to the family estate in Hedestedt, in northern Sweden. Henrik Wanner offers Blomkvist to solve the mystery of his niece Harriet Wanner's disappearance. 40 years ago, in 1966, 16-year-old Harriet disappeared from the absolutely isolated family island of Hedeby. In the morning of that day, she went to see the parade in Hedestedt and returned to the island of Hedeby in the afternoon. Then there was an accident on the only bridge and it became impossible to get out from the island unnoticed. And the girl could not drown, because the depth is too shallow and in total everything falls into the water is then washed ashore. Since numerous members of the Wanner family gathered on the island that day, Henrik assumes that one of the relatives killed the girl. For the past 40 years, every year on his birthday, someone has sent Henrik a dried flower, like the one Harriet gave him. He suspects that her killer is sending them to mock the old man. Henrik provides all the materials he has, including detailed police reports. Henrik promises Mikael a high fee and the opportunity to be rehabilitated in the Wennerström case because of some compromising evidence Wanner has. Blomkvist settles in a cottage on the territory of the island of Hedeby. He makes the family tree of the Wanner clan. The first person Mikael meets is Martin Wanner, Henrik's nephew and Harriet's brother. Martin is a smart man and also progressive, unlike most of his relatives. It was Martin who took over the Wanner concern when old Henrik decided to retire a few years ago. Martin treats Mikael with wine and says that all the other relatives are against the journalist looking for something on their island. Martin himself believes that if the old man needs to know the truth, this is his right. Suddenly, a howling sound is heard from below. Martin explains that it is here in the north the wind blows so strongly. Then the owner of the house goes to the basement for wine. Later, Cecilia Wanner, Harriet's cousin, tells Blomkvist that her sister Anita was closer to Harriet than anybody other. Blomkvist goes to Anita in London, but she refuses to help. She ran away from her family when she was 18 years old and now does not want to know anything about her family. In Hedeby, among the evidences, Blomkvist finds Harriet's notebook, which has a list of women with 5-digit numbers next to each name. Gustav, a retired police officer who handled Harriet's case when he was young, suggests these are telephone numbers, but they could not be linked to the names. Mikael's daughter, who has come to visit him, is modern religious movements addict, notices the numbers correspond to biblical verses. Each verse comes from the book of Leviticus and describes people's sins and the punishments to be applied to the sinner. The sinner is usually guilty of being a woman, and punishments are reduced to stoning to death or dividing the head from the body. Similarly, there was a series of women murders in Sweden from the late 1940s to the mid-1960s. Suddenly, Henrik has got a heart attack, and the Wanner family asks Mikael to stop investigating their family secrets. Despite the fact Lisbeth Salander is already an adult, she has a guardian assigned to her because she had a mental disorder diagnosed in childhood. For a long time, her guardian was an elderly lawyer, not indifferent to the girl's fate. But he has got a stroke. A new guardian, lawyer Niels Bierman, takes control of Lisbeth's finances. When Lisbeth approaches him for money for a new computer, Bierman agrees to give it if she gives him a blowjob. The next compulsion, Lisbeth decides to shoot on a hidden camera. which she installs on a backpack. She asks for money for groceries and meets with Bierman at his apartment. However, this time, Bierman does not limit himself to blackmail, but handcuffs her and subjects her to brutal sex violence. A week later, she appoints a new meeting with him at his apartment, stuns him with a shocker, ties him naked to the bed, and makes with him everything that he did with her. Lisbeth also reports that she filmed the last rape on a hidden camera. She promises Bierman that she will send it to the media and the police if he does not return control of her finances to her and does not contribute to her being recognized as sane and capable. If suddenly an accident happens to her, the video will be sent automatically. Also, in order to, he does not forget about what happened and he never again finds himself in bed with girls. She tattoos him on his stomach, writing in huge letters the phrase, "I am a rapist and a pig." Meanwhile, when Henrik is in critical condition after a stroke, his lawyer suggests Mikael to take Lisbeth Salander as his partner and shows Blomqvist the incredibly detailed report she made. Blomqvist comes to Salander's apartment and asks her to cooperate with him in finding Harriet's killer. Salander matched the Bible verses with a series of murders that took place from the late 1940s to the mid-1960s. Meanwhile, Blomqvist investigates Henrik's photographs of a parade in Hedestad that Harriet attended on the morning of her disappearance. In one picture, it is noticeable that someone scared her. Thanks to photographs from a different angle, Blomqvist discovers the one who scared Harriet so much. This is an unknown person in a blue school uniform. In the same time, Lisbeth discovers that all the murdered women had Jewish names. Suspicion falls on members of the Wanner family who were Nazis. As the work progresses, Lisbeth seduces Mikael, and after his short resistance, they become lovers. Mikael learns from Harold Wanner, Henrik's brother, a former Nazi. The unknown person in the photo is Martin Wanner, Harriet's brother. Lisbeth discovers in the Hedestad archives that Gottfried, Harriet and Martin's late father, was on a business trip to every town where murders took place. However, the last murder took place in 1967, 2 years after Gottfried's death. She soon discovers the latest victim went to Uppsala school, where Martin Wanner studied. Having found a joint photo of Gottfried and Martin in one of the cities where the murder was committed, Lisbeth realizes that son has followed in his father's footsteps. While Lisbeth searches the archives of Hedestad, Mikael on the island of Hedeby once again looks through the photos and finds the same emblem of the Uppsala school on the shirt of the last victim and Martin Wanner's jacket. Mikael, in search of evidence, enters Martin's house, but Martin guesses everything and puts the journalist to sleep with gas. Blomqvist wakes up in handcuffs and hung by the neck. Martin frankly enjoys talking about the rapes, tortures and murders of many women he did during last several decades. The girl killed in 1967 is considered the last in the series because Martin, that day committing his first murder on his own, left the body in plain sight, as his father taught. However, Martin liked the process, not the ritual show of his father, so for the next 40 years he got rid of the bodies. The last victim was in his basement right that evening when Martin first time invited Mikael to meet him and drink wine. Martin easily admits that he is a serial rapist and killer, but he denies the murder of his sister Harriet. Martin promises to kill Mikael, but in order to torture him first he puts a plastic bag over Mikael's head. Suddenly, Lisbeth hits Martin's head with a golf club and knocks him down. Lisbeth realized in the archive who the serial killer is, and when she didn't find Mikael in their house, Lisbeth headed to Martin's one. While Lisbeth frees Mikael, Martin comes to his senses, escapes from the basement, gets into his car and drives away. Lisbeth grabs the gun Martin left and chases after him on her motorcycle. Martin's car crashes at high speed. Lisbeth approaches the crash site, but the overturned car explodes and Martin dead in the fire. Blomqvist suggests that Harriet may still be alive. Blomqvist and Lisbeth fly to London, hack into Anita Wanger's computer and bug her phone, hoping she will contact Harriet to report Martin's death. When Anita makes no attempt to contact Harriet, Blomqvist comes to the conclusion that Anita Wanner is really Harriet, living under her sister's name to hide from Martin. When Blomqvist shows a garrote scar on his neck and says that Martin Wanner tortured him, the woman confesses that she is Harriet. When she turned 14, her father Gottfried began to rape her regularly. When she was already 15, she finally hit him on the head with an oar, and he fell into the lake and being very drunk, could never get out of the water. Martin saw all this and now he raped her until Henrik sent him to study in Uppsala. When Martin returned on the day of the parade, Harriet was fearful of the rapes will start again, so she left Sweden with Anita's help. In England, Harriet started a new life with her sister Anita's documents. Meantime, Anita took her husband's last name. Last 40 years, Harriet has sent a dried flower for every birthday of her uncle Henrik to hint that she is alive and okay. Now when Martin is dead, Harriet returns to Sweden and meets with Uncle Henrik. As promised, Henrik gives Mikael information about Wennerstrom. But Blomqvist is furious because the information is too old. It cannot be used in court as the statute of limitations has expired. The old man simply deceived Mikael, realizing that he would not have taken up the investigation just for money. Then Lisbeth hacks Wennerstrom's computer. She finds compromising evidence related to the illegal weapons and drug trades. Blomqvist's new article revives the Millennium magazine and destroys Wennerstrom. Also, Lisbeth hacks into Wennerstrom's numerous bank accounts and, creating a fake identity, steals all the money were on the accounts. A week later, Wennerstrom is found murdered in Spain. Lisbeth knew that she was stealing not only personal money, but also the investments of serious people who would not forgive Wennerstrom such losses. Upon returning to Stockholm, Lisbeth visits her old guardian who after a stroke has lost the ability to speak and is confined to a wheelchair. She tells him that she has found a friend whom he would approve of, and she herself is happy. Lisbeth buys Mikael an expensive leather jacket as a Christmas present. She arrives to give him a gift, but she sees how happy Mikael Blomqvist and Erika Berger are walking together. Realizing that Mikael doesn't need her, Lisbeth throws the gift into the nearest dumpster and drives away through the streets of Stockholm. Later, she decides it's time to take a trip around the world. Thanks for watching, press hearts, and if you think this is the best detective story has been filmed, be sure to subscribe. If you know more interesting detective stories, write about it in the comments.